Let's start at the beginning. How did you come to do Lady Chatterley's Lover? What drew you to this material?
So it was full pandemic. It was March 2020, and I read the script. I mean, I knew the book, and when I read the script, I felt that it was a very important story to say. For the lack of connection, we were all so locked in and so remote, and there's the theme of nature and imprisonment were so strong, and that's the theme that I explored already in my first feature film, in The Mustang. Obviously, it's a very different setting, but the themes were so vibrant in this material that for those reasons, I really wanted to explore them again through the journey of Connie. So that it started there.
Did you work with David Maggie, the screenwriter, on developing the script at all after you decided to come on to direct? Did the script undergo revisions?
Yes, definitely. I loved the script, but it was a 500 pages book. So obviously, when you adapt it, there's some elements that I thought was more prominent or more important for me, more visceral. And I just felt the need also to tell the story through her point of view, through Connie's point of view, and to be like much more under her skin, much more like sensorial, rather than being more omniscient. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of like my take on it when I read the script.
It's interesting when you mention the Mustang and that the theme of imprisonment and how those play out differently in the films. I hadn't thought about that, but I was struck. To me, this does feel there feels another through line to your work in both films. Of I don't know exactly how to put this, but there's a focus on sort of intimacy and also on bodies and physicality, mm-hmm. right? I mean, whether it's horses or people or horses and people. I mean, the way people are embodied and experience themselves physically feels central to both films.
Absolutely, and the silence is also playing a very important part. The invisible dialogues, and what I always like the impalpable, what you can't describe, but you can feel. And obviously Mustang was a man and a horse, but this one it's kind of like two creatures, two human beings, recognizing that they come from the same nature, that they made from the same wood, and they recognize that. And no matter where they come from, their background, they have this chemistry, this soul, this cosmic energy in common. And I think this is it's the most moving to me. It's when two people meet and what makes them connected. I feel like the same nature. There's something about them to recognize each other, being similar.
Were there aspects of the novel that you were sort of willing to let go of, or? I mean, there are a number of different adaptations of the novel for film and television, and I'm curious, were you looking to sort of lean in on certain parts of the novel more than others, or was that already kind of there in the script?
Yes, there's like the class, obviously the social pressure, but it's most, for me, importantly, a woman who takes ownership of her body. And that element is obviously always timely, and even more today. I don't know, but it was something that I needed to express, mm-hmm. and to and her freedom is through her sensuality, through the acceptance of her body, of her pleasure, and female sexual pleasure is rarely addressed. And D.H. Lawrence was actually the first writer to address it, and that's why it was so scandalous, and the book was banned for obscenity because it was too scandalous to talk about women freedom, and for those reasons I feel like it's it's been written 100 years ago, but it's still very relevant. And and there's something about what D.H. Lawrence really wanted to express is like sexuality and sensuality is part of human needs, and it's glorified in his book and as being beautiful and pure and not shameful and dirty. And I think this is a very important aspect of our society, as like we've been like the body of a woman is oftenly subject of tensions because it's not accepted as a pure shape or pure element. So I just really cherished this book for this reason, because the message is really, really strong and is always important to re-explore.
Since seeing your film, I haven't gone back and looked at the. I think I've seen one or two of the earlier versions of adaptations of this. But what you're talking about feels, my memory of those earlier versions, what you're talking about is much clearer and more prominent in this version than any the past adaptations. I mean, it feels the heart of the film. But I'd love to hear you talk about how you cast this, because now I can't imagine any other actors playing these parts. When did Emma and Jack come to the project, and what was that process like of seeing if they were going to be right for it?
Yes, that's because Emma, when I first read it, obviously it was the choice of Connie was so needed to feel modern, but also very vibrant. I didn't want to trap the story into the 20s. I needed this trajectory to be very timeless and accessible, and I had seen The Crown, and I thought that Emma playing Lady Diana was she had this incredible energy, and I was discovering a character that I thought I knew because there were so many people interpreting her, but there is something so different because she has this quality of being here and now. She brings you in the present, she brings you into something immediate, and that's a very strong quality. And she has something also pretty like that crossed the decades. You can believe her today, you can believe her in the 20s. She's a kind of a chameleon. And when we talked together, she really wanted to. She loved the scene, dancing naked under the rain. She was like, "This is an image of ecstatic freedom. I want to explore it. I never done something that crazy in my life. I really want to do it for the film." And I was like, "You're welcome, please, and let's do it together." So I felt we actually wanted to bring the same energy, to bring the same. Yes, ecstatic freedom. I think that's really what she said was spot on. Was really yeah. So that's we started this journey together, and then Jack came on board, and luckily they had an amazing chemistry. But that's something you cannot really predict. So you're hoping for, because obviously if there's no chemistry, there's no film. So,
did you read them together? Did you spend time? Like, how did you discover that the chemistry was there?
The first meeting together, they immediately got along. So there's something that happened, and I was like, "Oh, that's a good sign."
Yeah.
And they had exactly the same sense of humor, and they couldn't stop laughing. On the first meetings, I was like, "Oh, that's great." There's a sense of camaraderie, so it's a great beginning. And this, they really trusted each other. Mm-hmm. They really trusted each other, and that trust was so strong. And especially when they had to expose themselves so much, and they were so brave to do what they did. But they did it because they trusted each other so much, and they wanted to share this experience together. And they really, really always were, "Are you okay? How do you feel? I'm here for you." It was very, very a real friendship.
Since you mentioned it, I'd love for you to talk more about the scene in the rain. It's an incredible scene, and whatever you want to share about, like, how did you film that? How did you capture it? How long did it take to do that? Where in the production did that happen? Like, had they already done a lot together, like other sex scenes where they developed a, closeness and comfort, or was that early on in the shoot?
It was early on. I like all those intimate scenes happened really like on the second week, and it was. But we had a lot of rehearsals. We did 2 weeks of rehearsals with an intimacy coordinator. So we approached it as dancing. It was choreography, so that it was completely desexualized in a way that we were doing it. It felt like kind of like a dance, like a choreography. So that if everyone was kind of disinhibited, and when we did it on the second week, we did all those scenes in 1 week, so that it was behind and we didn't have it was
wow.
just like in and they were at that point they had this closeness and this trust that obviously they were like a thrill of going and dance naked under the rain in the big fields. There was odd. But we put a lot of music. We made it playful and joyful, and they just had fun. And we always had like a choreography or a shape, but then they owned it. So it's also like a lot of improvisation, and it's because they had like this already this intimacy and this camaraderie that it's so authentic. But it's true that without those rehearsals, we would have never it was so crucial to spend so much time together every day and talk about it. And because those scenes really mean something for her and for him. It's not just like intimate moments. It's really like, it really pushed their characters and their relationship into something like more transcendental and also through love and romance. I mean, there's so many things that happens so we needed to approach it as kind of like a storytelling each time, like through body language.
Yeah.
So the dancing part and being like was very important for us. Yeah.
The scene in the rain, I just think it's so incredible. I found myself, like, it has so many different colors. Like, there's parts that are very funny and goofy, and then it's also, very erotic and loving, and, I don't know, it's just, I love that scene. It's really rich in the film. And there's obviously a lot of sex scenes and a lot of intimacy. You mentioned the intimacy coordinator, but can you talk in a little more detail about how one works? Is the intimacy coordinator mainly working with the actors, or is it's with all of you as a group, with you and the DP and the actors to kind of coordinate like how this is going to happen?
Yes, she was working with me, with the actors, with the cinematographer that were involved in the rehearsal, because it was really important that we knew how to shoot those scenes, and we wanted to share ideas, like, if it's okay if we can put a camera here, is that okay if we do this shape, and she was bringing like some pillows, so that we started like really like they were just wearing like loose clothes, and she brought some pillows so that we could just mime and just rehearse like all the choreography, and that was we had a lot of fun. We couldn't stop laughing. It was kind of sometimes ridiculous, but it was very playful, and always was like, okay, so we have to do that. Let's think about a choreography about this moment. And it was we had a lot of fun. It completely broke the ice, because obviously it's things that it really helped my work, because it's hard to direct a sex scene and you really feel like kind of a perv, like behind your monitor, like trying, So thanks God she was there, because she really helped me to also understand what I needed and the authenticity. And she was like, do you need this? And it was like, oh, that would be great, but I would never dare to ask. And it was like, let me see if they're okay, if they're fine. So she was kind of a co-director for those scenes. And without her, everyone would have been a bit, much more embarrassed, and I would have never dared to really ask and to go deeper, because I would have feel like a voyeurist and horrible person. So it's an intimacy coordinator is definitely such a a brilliant idea to have someone, who is like a very, for us, for this film, it was a key person.
Yeah. Could you talk a bit about your on set, your working relationship with the cinematographer Benoît Delhomme, or why did you bring him onto the project? What in his work spoke to you?
I had seen his the film that he did about Vincent van Gogh, Eternal Gates, from Julian Schnabel. I really loved his choices of frame and lenses and colors. That was very odd and vibrant, and I also saw his work with John Hillcoat, Lawless. That I saw his lighting was beautiful. But mainly what he did in Eternal Gate, like completely seduced me, and I had working with Ruben Impens on my first feature film. He wasn't free, so I immediately thought about Benoît, and it was such a great match.
Oh, I mean, it's gorgeously shot. I mean, the film is so beautiful. Every element of it. I mean, the wardrobe and costume as well is insane. Like Emma's clothing throughout is really.
There's a lot of her clothes that you can find in some stores today. Actually, if
I am not surprised.
I have some tips if any of you is interested. It was part of like our will to not feel like a period film or a costume movie. We felt that it was interesting to blend some different periods of, like, obviously to respect like the shape of the 20s, but maybe play with the fabric and find like fabrics from today, different patterns, different like the thing that would always, you would always like be, okay, it's timeless. It's timeless. It could happen at any time, and that was really important. Also for the production design, it's like the same, just like what's defined a bit the world at the time, but never to feel too heavy. So that's we never oppressed by and it's not a documentary, so it's not, sometimes there were like a lot of anachronism. But that's not, I'm like, sometimes some people were like, oh, but it's not, you cannot have that in the, and I was like, it's not a documentary. Who cares? We let's be free. It's a film. So.
Yeah. I'd also love to hear you talk about, forgive me, I forget the actor's name, I feel terrible, but her husband, the relationship between Lady Chatterley and her husband, I thought was
Clifford.
really interesting as well, Clifford. I mean, as the film goes on, he becomes less and less sympathetic, and she's, freer and away from him. But could you talk about what, like, in casting that actor to play that part, and how you sort of established that marriage and the relationship early on? Because I feel like you walk this really interesting line where initially I'm kind of with him and them together. He's obviously not. I know he's not going to stay in the picture, but there's something very human about him, but it changes. You see the relationship change dramatically over the course of the story. So how you go about casting someone for that challenge?
So we for this role, I really wanted to discover someone, and we also saw a lot of disabled actors to find like an authentic feeling about really being trapped, and so in my first short film, I had worked with a young woman who had like brittle bones. I had a disability, and there was a truth, obviously, for the role that was very important to keep, and we met Matthew. And Matthew had actually knew really well the book. He's an actor. He's playing on stage, and yeah, he shared there is something about his vulnerability. There is something about him, because I didn't want this character to be just the asshole, like just the bad guy, or being like just the like the ignorant husband. we needed to have empathy for him, and I think that's what Matthew does really well. Not only just because he has a disability, because he also understands the need to exist and to sometimes being trying to compensate something, and I thought it was very moving in his audition.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great performance in just the way you described it. I can imagine so many other actors just going for the asshole, which he definitely brings. I mean, he is, but he's human, and
yes, I think there's definitely a lot of humanity coming out from that feel more nuanced. That's just being, an asshole.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear you talk about the editing process on this. I mean, for the whole film, but especially since you already talked about in production and how you were covering all the sex scenes. Like when you got into editing, how did you and your editors work on building those scenes so that they worked narratively and did everything that brought all the colors that you wanted them to have?
So I work with my editor since 10 years. We always work together since the first short film I made. So that's my closest collaborator, and I trust her blindly. And so she started to cut the film. She knew that I really wanted to emphasize on her point of view and her story. So everything was kind of like pushed toward this feeling, but also like the binary world, like the inside and the outside, which was something that we explored also in the Mustang, like inside the prison, outside of the prison. And that's also something that we created together to really feel like the entrapment, the in and out. So she did the first cut, and then we worked together to what was the most challenging is to feel to really have the love story that works, to feel the passion, to feel the desire, the sensuality, and to make sure that all the senses were open all the time. So she worked really hard to kind of capture, and it was a lot of work, and especially the sex scenes. It was really hard to edit for her to make it believable, and sometimes it felt too much, so we had to take out, and we needed to find the right balance between sexuality, romance, love, playfulness. All of those ingredients were very delicate to measure.
The whole central part of the film where you kind of track their relationship as it starts and develops and grows over time. It's really, it's obviously great performance and great directing, but the editing is remarkable because it's just, you talk about a dance. It's like, it's this modulated build of showing how that relationship grows over time. I thought it was beautifully done.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It was also like the camera camera work, very loose, untraditional for like this, kind of film. There's something about always in movement. And for me, Connie was always in movement. She's restless. So I think that's, there was like the editing and the cinematography bring this motion.
We should also talk about the composer and the music for the film. Can you talk about it's Isabella
Summers?
Yeah.
Yes. We met in London. She's the founder of Florence and the Machine. She's now composer for film and television, and I had listened to her work. And there is something very, what I loved, it's how she plays with the instruments, like classic and modern, and makes, and her sometimes really unexpected choices for instrument that brings like some tones that flirt between classicism and modernity. And that's what we really enjoy together. It's like how to modernize let's not go for like a traditional classic score, but with classic elements. So there's a lot of piano, there's cello, but sometimes you have like unexpectedly you have like a bass, electric bass, or you have like some drums, and we wanted to do a score that talks about the story, but also to find the right instrument to talk about Connie, and to really track her emotional journey. And so we went through like some areas that felt sometimes completely a little bit maybe too modern, but we really enjoyed it. And it came organically. But she's extremely talented, and it was a joy to work with her.
That's great. Well, lastly, I want to ask you about, you mentioned that the film started, it was early COVID, so the whole development, everything was during the pandemic. But now the film is coming out in theaters with audiences. You've been, was it Telluride, your first festival?
Yes.
So would love to hear you talk about your experience of seeing the film with an audience and seeing it come out in the world, sort of.
The first time we saw it with an audience, it was at Telluride, and I was very surprised how people laughed. I had no predicted at all that this film could be funny in any degree. So to hear people reacting and laughing, I was like, wow, there was a big surprise for me. So it was a great and nice surprise. There was someone that was in tears, which I was extremely moved and happy for him. He was really like in tears, but I was like, thank you for your tears.
Yeah.
So no, it was. It's always like giving birth. It's like how it's gonna be, how it's gonna be received, and it's like the thrill. And finally, it was a good experience. So
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Laure, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you
all for coming.